Instead of cleaning my background to make it look nice, I just threw a pretty blanket over it. The level of effort I put into my videos. Hi, my name is Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the Atlas 6. It's backwards. It doesn't matter. Okay. I finished reading this the other day and I just need to talk about it. This isn't going to be a review. This book went viral a couple of years ago when it was self-published and then got a lot of hype again when it was traditionally published. And I feel like if you've seen this book and wanted to read it, you've read it already, and I'm late to the party. This isn't going to be like, this book is good, you should read it, because it's going to be more of a book club discussion because I just really want to talk about it. First of all, I love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Actually, after writing down all of my notes for what I was going to say in this video, I realized that I probably should have given this book like 4 stars. But I was in a reading slump. The last 2 books I had read were 1 stars. I just was swept away by having a book that was interesting and competently written and intense, and it was already just right up my alley. And I read this book in like 3 days. I actually lost sleep over this book because I stayed up the entire night reading it. I would read until like 4 a.m. Anyway, the spoiler-free description of this book is, this is an urban fantasy, dark academia, new adult. I think those are the 3 big categories it would be considered. Magic exists in this world, and the Library of Alexandria was not actually destroyed. It was hidden away, and the documents that it had, the historical and magical documents, are protected by this society of magical people called Medians? I don't know. I said Medians, so I'm going to call them Medians. So every decade, six of the most powerful Medians are selected to join the society, but only 5 are initiated. So you have a year to prove not only your power, but your worthiness of joining the society. And then the 6 decide who to eliminate. And the 6 that are chosen this year are Libby and Nico, who are physicists, which means they can manipulate the physical matter around them. They're also academic rivals. They actually went to college together, so that was cool that they knew each other. Then Tristan, who can see through illusions. Parissa, who is a telepath and also a sexy succubus seduction lady, and we'll get into that. Callum, who's an empath, which means he can read and manipulate emotions. And then Raina, who's a naturalist, which just means she can control plants. Again, this book was right up my alley. It's magic, it's academia, it's new adult. I am trying to transition out of young adult, teenage books into the more mature fiction. So this is a book where all of the characters were my age. I'm 22, I'm a recent college grad. These characters are literally recent college grads, basically going to magical grad school, but also a secret cult society, so maybe I should go to grad school. Now on to the more spoilery section where I'm just going to go through my thoughts of the book and what I liked and didn't like. Okay. A while back on TikTok, there was this trend where you would point out all of the characters that were like literally you, and I could never do that because I could never think of characters who were just like me or that I connected to in that way. There were characters I really liked, characters I thought were well written, characters I looked up to, but no characters that were like me in that world, right? Until I met Libby Rhodes. I am obsessed with Libby Rhodes. I'm literally Libby Rhodes. She's literally me. Like, I actually, at the end of the book, I was contemplating cutting my bangs so that I looked more like Libby. Actually, hold on. I think there's character illustrations. So this is what the character is supposed to canonically look like. I look like her, don't I? I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm delusional. But anyway, I really liked Libby. I think Libby's archetype would be the shy, nerdy, unassuming, or insecure character. And I feel like lesser books just kind of slap those character attributes on their character without it actually having consequences or there being a reason for the character to be like that. It's just the character is shy because the author says she's shy. In Libby's case, I feel like those character attributes actually have weight to them, and they are very important for her character arc and development. If you didn't like Libby, if you thought she was like obnoxious or boring, you probably didn't like this book, because Libby is inescapable. She is like the biggest part of this book. I would even consider her the protagonist of this book, even though it's an ensemble cast. And I could tell she was the author's favorite to write because she got like the most action. She got the most interesting lines and chapters. Speaking of Libby and the rivalry, I think it was kind of one-sided because you see it from Libby's perspective, and she keeps going on and on about how she and Nico are always compared to each other, and she has to prove herself against Nico, and she has to prove that she's better than him, and Nico is awful, and they hate each other. And then you see Nico's perspective, and all he really says is that she's annoying. You see him talk about her, and he goes, oh yeah, she's really powerful and really cool and really deserving of this position, but she's just kind of annoying, you know? She just kind of fidgets a lot, and I don't like that. And you really get the sense that Nico is super fond of Libby, to the point where I actually thought for most of the book it would be revealed that Nico was in love with Libby. Like, she didn't realize it, but then Parissa would be reading his mind, and she'd drop the bomb, and he'd be like, oh, why would you reveal that? Oh my god. And then Libby would be like, oh my god, Nico, you're in love with me? But Ezra, my boyfriend. And then he'd be like, I know, that's why I hate Ezra. That didn't happen, which I'm actually glad, because since I was predicting it, it would have been cliche if it did happen. So I'm glad it didn't. But I still think it might happen. The rivalry was actually Libby's driving force for the beginning half of the book, and then the author seems to realize that's not going to work, because she and Nico form an alliance and have a truce, and that rivalry kind of like fizzles out as the book progresses. And so her driving force for joining the society was originally prove herself better than Nico, and then it immediately switches to researching magic that could have saved her dead sister. And it almost felt like her dead sister was an afterthought. Like, after Blake realized the rivalry wasn't a strong enough driving force, she came up with the idea of the dead sister, and then goes back into the first couple chapters and kind of mentions her a few times. It just felt like it came out of nowhere, or was like an afterthought for me. Raina needed more time. I blew out my mic. Raina needed more time. Justice for Raina. I'm kind of pissed about this, actually. I understand that she is more than likely going to be completely fleshed out in the second book, but seeing how every other character has so much more attention and importance in the story, I was very upset that Raina was not given that same attention and importance. I need to care about Raina in the first book for me to care about her in the second book. And I liked Raina. I thought she was interesting, and I wanted more of her. The thing is, I was bored reading her chapters. I know, it's like, she's so interesting, but also I was bored reading her chapters. Two things can be true at the same time. We're given a reason Raina is necessary to Nico and Libby. She's a battery for them to use. But what about her controlling plants is necessary? That's not fleshed out or used. I actually assumed that she was going to be a sleeper agent, like she was laid back and quiet and not important in the first part, and then at the end she would be the reason something really big happened, or like the person to save the day, and that's not what happens. I'm a little upset that Raina was not given the same character depth that the other characters had. We actually don't even learn about Raina's backstory from Raina. It's not like an important character beat for her to tell us. It's Callum telling Tristan about it at the very end of the book. So, like, come on. I needed more of Raina. I liked Parissa, but I do think her character was the one that had the most harmful stereotypes, and we need to talk about it. So, Parissa is the telepath, but with her telepathy, she uses her sexual wiles, her feminine her feminine power to gain information and gain social status and power. In lesser books, I feel like this is handled much worse. It's always a surface level thing. It's like the author wants a prostitute character, but then is like, wait, we have to make it sex positive, so the sex is actually empowering, and it's just not. I think with Parissa, she has a whole monologue about why it is, and she doesn't say that it's empowering necessarily, but that this is the way she has been able to find power. And I think her backstory gives a solid enough reason for why she would have that mentality, that it gives her character more, I keep saying depth and weight, but that's really all I can say, all I can think of. There's more of a logical reason she would have this mentality. Now, the two stereotypes that I feel are harmful for Parissa are she's an openly bisexual woman, and bisexual women specifically are often seen as seductresses or hypersexual and cheaters, and this is just used a lot of the time to demonize bisexual women. There's just this pattern where every sex-empowered succubus, seductress, whatever you want to call them, character is bisexual, and usually they are only seen talking to and seducing men, but then they'll mention how they're not opposed to a woman. As a bisexual woman myself, it makes me feel yucky. I'm not a fan of it, and it can be harmful. The other stereotype, which is, in my opinion, far more harmful, is the fact that Parissa is a woman of color. That's not the stereotype. That's not harmful. She is a woman of color, specifically a Middle Eastern woman, and that is a group that is overly sexualized and exoticized to the point where it becomes super harmful. Women of color experience sexual violence at higher rates than white women. So to have this Middle Eastern woman be the hypersexualized, flaunting her sexiness, always, it's a bigger pattern. I think Parissa is three-dimensional enough that you cannot strip her down to just these stereotypes, but these are also stereotypes that we need to keep in mind when creating and consuming media, because they are parts of bigger patterns that are harmful to women, specifically women of color and queer women. That's all I have to say about Parissa. I still like her. Again, as a bisexual woman, I did really enjoy the kiss when Parissa kisses Libby. I liked it. It was cute. It was sweet. I liked it. I know they're not in a relationship or anything, so it's not really queer content, but I think Tristan's power is unique. I think he's pretty cool. I don't have much to say about Tristan. I do think it was weird that his backstory as being the son of a magical crime boss was mentioned a lot, but then that backstory didn't really have an effect on the current story. It does give explanation to his character, so I understand, and I think I have predictions for the second book, which I'll leave to the end of the video. I love the relationship between Libby and Tristan. It caught me by surprise because, like I said, I thought Nico and Libby were going to be a thing, so it kind of caught me by surprise that Libby and Tristan had an interaction, a romantic interaction, but it didn't really come out of the blue. As soon as it happened, I was like, oh, that's why Tristan kept talking about Libby in his chapters, because he liked, okay, that makes sense. And I thought it was really cute and really cool. I prefer group relationships that are more fluid. I don't like when it's a big group and everyone is strictly paired off in nice little couples. So the fact that it's more fluid, complex, nuanced. Tristan and Parissa have a thing. Tristan and Libby have a thing. Nico and Parissa flirts. I like that stuff. It just makes it more interesting to me. I think Callum is the best character, like the best written character, because he's like evil at first. He's not really evil. So he's like manipulative. And at first I was like, oh, he's just like that cocky jerk that thinks he's better than everyone. And then I was like, oh my God, he's actually evil. Like he uses his power to do really bad things. And then I was like, oh, but like it makes sense why he would do that, because he feels everyone's sadness, so he's just putting them out of their misery. And then I was like, wait, no, he's only saying that to manipulate people, and that's still an evil thing to do. And I am actually very excited to see Callum's redemption. I definitely think he's going to be redeemed, and I'm excited to see how it works out and how the others accept him. Not gonna lie, the ending was kind of confusing for me. I really, really liked the Ezra and Atlas conspiracy, and how Ezra and Atlas actually orchestrated this whole thing to then bring down the society from the inside out. I thought that was really interesting, but I did kind of get lost trying to understand it. But then again, I was reading this book on like no sleep, so I think I was just kind of out of it by the time I got to that part. I'm kind of disappointed that Libby wasn't dead. Big spoiler. Sorry, big spoiler. I did say this is huge spoilers. I thought we were gonna have a Game of Thrones moment where it's like, oh my God, a main character could die. Oh my gosh, you can't do that in a book, but actually you can. And then Libby wasn't dead, and it's revealed like almost immediately. It was a bit disappointing because I hate fake out deaths, but again, I love Libby. She is literally me, so I'm really glad that she's not dead, because I think she's cool, and I'm rooting for Libby. Another thing is I just really liked the atmosphere and the magic system. It was confusing. I think at certain points it was hard for me to understand how the magic was working because of the way it was described, but Blake is also trying to describe concepts that don't really exist. I think there's a difference between like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings wizard magic, where it's just kind of there. There are people who can do special abilities and it's not explained. They can shoot fire and it's just accepted, versus like kind of alchemical magic where it interacts with science and they use it to explain scientific phenomenons, but also vice versa, and it's studied. And that's what this book is about, where they have to actually study magic and how it exists in this world. And that's something I really like, and I want to see more books explore that. Now, here are just some random thoughts that I had. I don't really feel one way or the other about them. They're just some random things. I don't need all the big words. In a lot of dark academia, there's this like need to use huge words in order to show off how smart they are. And again, Callum and Libby were the worst offenders because they, as characters, felt like they needed to prove how smart they are to the others. But there were just some words that were like not necessary. The biggest example was Libby is scolding Nico, and at one point she says that she's going to defenestrate him out a window. You didn't need to use that word. You could just say throw him out a window. It honestly felt like Blake had found out there was a word specifically for throwing somebody out a window and was like, that's funny, I'm gonna put that in my book. It's like there were I liked a lot of the big words. It helped the flow, it helped the tone, it made me feel smart. But then there were some big words that I was like, you didn't need to use the big word version of this. You could have just said throw him out a window. They used everyone's name too much, specifically Rhodes and Verona. So Libby's last name is Rhodes and Nico's last name is Verona, and they almost always call each other by their last names. And so when they would be arguing, it would just be those two talking to each other, and yet they would constantly be saying Rhodes and Verona and Rhodes and Verona. And it's like, you've already addressed the other person. You don't need to keep saying their name. I feel like that is such a stilted way of speaking. If I'm talking to one other person, I don't say their name every other sentence. It just made the dialogue feel stilted and fake rather than flow nicely like a human would speak. They're so upset to have to kill somebody at the end of the year, but like in chapter 3, almost all of them kill somebody. Specifically Nico. Nico like is thrilled to actually fight and kill. Like he's stabbing people, right? And then Libby, who's the one that freaks out the most about having to kill somebody, in the 3rd chapter, she's the one like blasting people, right? Like it seemed a bit weird that they were all like, oh my god, we're gonna have to eliminate somebody and that means kill them, but like you've already killed other people. It just felt weird to me. How were they initiated if Libby wasn't actually dead? It's confirmed to us that Libby didn't actually die, and yet the library like needs a blood sacrifice, and that's why every decade they kill somebody and all that. But both Libby's year, so that decade, and the decade that Ezra went, because Ezra was the sacrifice of his decade, but he just time traveled, so he disappeared. So like, why were they able to be initiated if the sacrifice didn't actually go through? And maybe that's going to be revealed as like a big part of the 2nd or 3rd book, but it just was kind of confusing to me. Another random thought I had is like, I've never seen characters talk so much about wanting to have sex with each other without having sex with each other. Parissa and Nico have a whole conversation where they're just talking about it, and Nico's like, yeah, I'd have sex with you, and Parissa's like, I'd have sex with you too. Unfortunately, I can't because blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It just felt weird to me. Here are my predictions for the sequel. I haven't read the sequel yet. I haven't bought it. I'm going to buy it sometime soon, but I'm going to read it and then look back to see if any of my predictions are correct. First of all, I think Nico is still in love with Libby. We're told that he's also in love with Gideon and just doesn't realize it. He, as a character, kind of pushes his emotions down. So I think it's going to bubble up that he has feelings for both Libby and Gideon, and he's going to have to choose between the two, and he's going to choose Gideon because that's cute. But yeah, I'm still thinking that he likes Libby. I don't think I said this before, but he mentions multiple times that he likes women who are attractive and mean to him, which is Libby, right? Libby ends up with Ezra. He like kidnaps her at the end of the book. So I think she's either going to get Stockholm Syndrome or be manipulated into working with him. And so she's going to turn to the bad side. I already said Callum's going to be redeemed, but I think he is going to be redeemed specifically through his friendship with Reyna. I think he and Reyna are going to get super close, and so then he is going to be like ride or die for Reyna, and it's going to be like Callum, Reyna, and Nico that are like this group of best friends. I don't want Reyna to have a relationship. I don't want her to be paired with anybody. I think it's important that we have characters who are not in relationships because relationships and love don't cure all. But I do think that she's going to end up getting super close with Callum and Nico. We don't get any information in this book about Reyna's sexuality, so I think it's going to be revealed that she is either asexual or a lesbian. I really want Parissa to have a girlfriend. I said before that Parissa was openly bisexual, but she really only mentions having relations with girls a couple times and then kisses Libby. So I think in the next book we're going to introduce a new female character, and she is going to date Parissa. I think that they are going to need the help of Adrian Kane, who is the criminal father of Tristan. I think the fact that he was talked about so much but not ultimately used or seen in the first book means that he's going to be used in the second book, and we're going to get more information about him and Tristan's relationship. And I think ultimately they are all going to turn on the society, and I think it can be two reasons. Either they're going to all realize that the society is actually bad and they are going to join the forum to take down the society, or they are going to pretend to join the forum to take down the society, but they're actually just joining the forum to tear it apart from the inside out. They're like double agents. And that's how I think the second book is going to go. I will let you know if any of those predictions were correct. Do you like my little hearts? I saw it on TikTok and I had to I had to do it. All right, and those were my thoughts on the Atlas 6. I can't wait to read the next book, and I think it's supposed to be part of a trilogy, so I will definitely be reading all of the books. And I kind of want to look into Olivie Blake's other books. I think she has like 4 out now. 2 of them are not part of this series, or like different books. So yeah,